ladies and gentlemen, episode number 126 of Let's Go Racing with David Starr. Tyler Johnson with you. So glad to have you with us. Coming up on today's show, it is our official NASCAR Playoff Preview, as we will break down what is ahead for the final 10 races of the season, as we will determine a champion in the NASCAR Cup Series. It all begins this weekend in Darlington, Labor Day weekend. We will look ahead to this weekend's race and also look back at how we got here with a crazy race that was at Daytona, with Buescher claiming his third win in the last 5 races. Later on, we'll have our news and notes. A lot going on in the NASCAR silly season landscape that we'll get to. We'll also have our Ask David segment, where you guys submit questions to us and we'll answer them, coming up at the end of the show. Joining us, as always, the man, the myth, the legend, the one and only David Starr is in the house. David, always a pleasure, my friend. How we feeling this week?
Man, we're doing good, man. Good to see you guys. What a great weekend of racing, man. Daytona did not disappoint, and only thing would have made it better if I'd have been there racing, but anyway, I wasn't. But man, it was exciting 2 nights of racing there at Daytona. Incredible, man. But excited to talk about the ones that didn't make it and the ones that did make it. You know what I mean? But it was a great weekend of racing. I've been busy working on NASCAR stuff in my racing school, and I'm sure you guys have been doing the same thing.
Yeah, certainly so. And we're joined by Dominic Aragon of the RacingExperts.com, joins us as well. Dom, no shortage of things to get to this week as we head into the playoffs. All the anticipation, the drama leading into this, and right down to the very end, I don't think it disappointed.
No, not at all. I mean, you have so many drivers. There were 17 that could have won the race and gone and punched a ticket to the playoffs as a win and you're in kind of thing. That's going to create some natural excitement in a situation like that. Down to, I mean, we had a big crash and took out pretty much half the field. We have a spectacular flip that makes the national news outside of the NASCAR realm. And then you have a great finish, a 2-lap dash in overtime to determine who wins the race. And man, looking ahead to the playoffs too, and Bubba Wallace being that driver we were talking about on the show last week, on the verge of making his first playoff appearance, getting that done, to Martin Truex Jr. clinching the regular season championship, and all the other 14 drivers in between that. So many cool storylines heading into the NASCAR 2023 playoffs. Surely it's not going to be a disappointing playoff run, but I got to imagine, Tyler, there's going to probably be some upsets and some things that we can expect, and a little bit of everything. That's what makes great TV and great to watch and great to be even better in person to go see.
NASCAR is a great reality show every week, and you're going to see that throughout this postseason. We will talk about that coming up in just a bit. Before we get to that, though, guys, David, I got to ask you just real quick. You were doing some local TV this week, Fox 4 in Dallas. You took some of their morning crew for a little test ride out at Texas Motor Speedway. Tell me about that experience and getting the TV time and all.
Man, you know, it was just amazing. You know, partnering up with the Texas Motor Speedway is just incredible, and the things that we get to do and how we get to promote our racing school. The Speedway, through my wife Kim and working with Dave Hart at the Texas Motor Speedway, we invited some media out, and Fox 4 morning guy Brendan Todd, he does the Good Morning Show for Fox and Good Day Show, whatever they call it. I think it's Good Day, you know, Dallas on Fox. But Brendan Todd came out, and I guess he's a big NASCAR fan, and that was kind of a bucket list thing for him to drive a NASCAR race car. Man, he did a phenomenal job, went through all the training, showed him the cars, and took him out on the racetrack, gave him some training. And, man, he just had such a great time. He just loved every second of it. And, man, it's amazing the show they put together. Tyler, I don't even know how long it ran, but it was at least maybe a 5-minute segment about Texas Motor Speedway, our NASCAR driving school, Team Texas High Performance Driving School, based there at the Texas Motor Speedway, and a little bit to promote the race we got coming up at Texas Motor Speedway, the playoff race And man, they did a phenomenal job. And Brendan Todd was just awesome. And just, that type of advertising on a morning show was just priceless, So even though we had a good time, it was awesome. Everybody had a good time. Hopefully we pick up some new customers from it, but it was incredible. And man, again, the best part about the racing school stuff is seeing kind of bringing dreams to reality for people, being out there, be able to put them in a real NASCAR race car and let them go as fast as they can go, 150 miles an hour, and then seeing the enthusiasm, the excitement, and just all the emotions. Because he said, "Man, I always wanted to be a race car driver," which I thought was interesting, And now he's a big time Fox TV, commentator. It was amazing.
Oh, yeah. Dominic, I would describe it this way as far as Team Texas goes, from my experience when I did this a couple of weeks ago myself. I don't think I would ever pay to go to an amusement park ever again, because I can get way more thrill out of going to Team Texas and hopping in a real NASCAR race car and doing that than I ever would riding a roller coaster. I love roller coasters and all that, but hopping in a NASCAR race car and getting behind the wheel, that's the ultimate roller coaster.
You'll never catch me behind a roller coaster because you're not in control. But what I like about having the opportunity to do something like the Team Texas driving school someday is you are in control, and you get to really feel that. I'm sure, Tyler, you can relate. You can probably feel every bump in the road, and you're holding that steering wheel, and you have the track outside your windshield. I can only imagine. I've dreamed about it. I will take you up on it someday, David. I look forward to getting behind the wheel there at Team Texas. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, you will do it one day, but man, it's so much fun. People, wives buy it for their husbands for anniversary presents, Christmas present, birthday presents, and husbands buy it for their wives. It's just a neat thing, the best part about the whole industry is being a race car driver. That's everything to me. But having customers and companies and people come and driving our race cars and seeing the joy that it brings, 99.9% of everyone that comes through the school, the experience they have is just amazing. And man, just so thankful that the Texas Motor Speedway brought out the media, and the coverage we got was incredible. Just unbelievable.
That's great. I could have guessed that Dominic was too scared for roller coasters. Not surprised.
I want to be in control, man. I'm not in control.
You can't control everything. You got to control what you can control. I mean,
and I can control a race car more than a roller coaster.
You're soft.
Okay. All right. I like being in control, though. I can admit that.
He's a control freak. All right. Dominic, a soft control freak. A little pansy there, but that's all right. Let's look back at this weekend. Chris Buescher gets it done. Third win in the last 5 races. The thing that's so incredible to me, David, with this stretch is that he won at 3 completely different style of racetracks. From Richmond to Michigan to Daytona. None of those 3 tracks are similar to each other at all. And he found a way to get the job done. Car was fast. He ran up front. Chris Buescher was awesome at all 3 of those tracks. And to get those 3 wins, not only to be on fire like he is with 3 wins the last 5 races, but to win those tracks, you have to consider Chris Buescher a threat to win the championship now, right?
No doubt about it. Momentum. But you got to understand, it was a 1-2 finish. His boss and teammate, Brad Keselowski, you could almost take the race Saturday night and credit Brad, his boss and his teammate, really is the reason why Chris won, because his boss pushed him to the win. You know what I mean? It was amazing to see them work together. And it was interesting how it played out. But to answer your question, Tyler, I believe Chris Buescher, you hear Brad Keselowski talk about it. He grabbed Chris Buescher years ago when he had the opportunity because he saw a lot of talent. Chris is such a great race car driver. And like you said, he's won on 3 different types of racetrack. He's won, Tyler, and I asked the question, 3 races in the last, how many, 5 or 6? How many races has it been?
5,
I mean, that's amazing. That's really unheard of, And And the timing of it, man, the timing of it, Tyler, I'd have to agree with you, but he's got to be one that's going to give, I would say, the 24 car, Byron, a run for his money. If anybody can give the Hendricks car, Byron, a run for his money, it's going to be Chris Buescher. And then that organization, Rouse, Fenway, Keselowski, you can't even count out Brad. I know he's in the chase and he didn't even want to race, but he's close. He's right there. You know what I mean? So I'd look at both of those teams. Obviously, Chris being, to me, the one that stands out the most, but you can't count Brad out either, man. He's been strong. The cars have a lot of speed, but amazing what that organization has done in a short period of time at the right time. So, man, Chris Buescher and that they got a lot of momentum coming into this into the championship run here. These last 10 races,
Yeah.
amazing.
Let me ask this, Tom. A lot of criticism actually for Brad Keselowski the last couple days that he was too passive there at the end, that he didn't try to challenge Chris Buescher for the win at the end of that race, and that he was just content with getting Buescher that win and finishing second. Is that criticism fair? I mean, when I go back and watch the footage, Buescher was so fast, I don't know how Brad would have been able to get around him, in all honesty. I get why. I understand maybe Brad is a little, you could argue, content of some sorts of what Chris has done, and maybe he could go a little harder himself, but I just don't know where the opening would have been for him to get around that 17 car at the end of the race on Saturday.
No, you're not wrong. And Brad even said in his post-race comments that he wanted to make sure they were clear in 3 and 4 before he was going to try to make a run at the checkered flag. But moot point, the 17 car won. And like you said, he looked faster anyway, coming off turn 4 and going for that checkered flag. So even if Brad wanted to make a move, I don't know how that would have looked. But he did say they wanted to make sure they were clear of turn 4 and just not throw away the race and have a big crash like how they did at the final lap of stage 2. I mean, that took 16 cars out. So you got to be thinking, you're Brad Keselowski, you have a checkered flag with your organization out the windshield, push Chris till you know you're going to get that win, and then maybe try something. But you got to imagine they didn't want to throw away a 1-2 potential finish and at least clear turn 4. I don't think the criticism, I mean, I get it. I get why it's there. But when you actually take a step further and take a look at why the methodicalness of Brad Keselowski is very methodical as a businessman, as a race car driver. And that was a very calculated move. In fact, Tyler, I will take that one step up and I will praise him for that move. Not only did you secure a 1-2 move for your organization, but you were trying to time it the way it worked. And Brad Keselowski, a 7-time Super Speedway Racer winner, I'm not going to question his decision-making on that. He clearly thought something was there. The timing just did not work out.
Right. I mean, I look at it this way, David. Brad was already locked in the playoff. He made the correct call for his position. If Brad was needing to get a win to get in, then maybe it would have made sense to be more aggressive. But to play it the way he did, his teammate, his car right in front of him, I don't know what more he could have done in that situation. That 17 was just faster in that moment.
Yeah, I mean, he did the right thing from all aspects of it. When you finish first and second, your sponsors got to be over the top excited. The exposure they got, the momentum the team has, Chris's third win. Yeah, I just don't know if there was a car strong enough. If Brad needed to try to win the race, I don't know, because there was a gap between Brad Keselowski's car and the car that was behind him. And you look at the last 2 laps of that race, Harvick was on the bottom. I really thought Harvick had something for him, and maybe even Chase Elliott. And Chase Elliott had his teammate behind him, Kyle Larson. But let me tell you, if you go back and remember, the Brad Keselowski cars, Chris Buescher and Brad's cars, they were phenomenal. They had a lot of speed. They looked like they were handling well. But if you looked at Harvick couldn't even keep up. He didn't have help from even Chase Elliott, because Chase couldn't bump draft him, because Chase might have been having some handling problems, and they just couldn't get hooked up and go. And and like Chase said, I saw his interview. He just said, "Man, I just couldn't. I had all I had." He had good speed, but his car might not have handled that well. But he's definitely, him and Harvick kind of faded. You know what I mean? If you remember going into turn 3, you're thinking, man, uh, uh, you're thinking Chase Elliott's going to bump draft Kevin, and Kevin's going to have an opportunity. But man, as they came off turn 4, man, Chris and Brad, they had them covered at that point. You know what I mean? I think their just cars were handling well. They could keep their foot wide open on the gas pedal. They drove good, and everybody else was struggling somewhat. You know what I mean? If I remember right. But, Chase, I remember seeing Chase. I was like, man, he's not helping Harvick. He couldn't, and then I looked at Kyle Larson behind his teammate Chase Elliott. He wasn't any help either. So it was interesting to see that those guys, obviously cars wasn't driving like they needed to, or they would all been bump drafting each other and having a shot. You know what I mean? It just and it goes back to tell you that, man, Chris Buescher and Brad Keselowski, man, not only did they do a phenomenal job driving the cars, racing the cars, but man, their organization getting those cars where they got lots of speed and they're driving good. I mean, they were class of the field right there at the end. It was amazing,
Yeah.
Yeah.
The big highlight of the night, we mentioned at the top of the show, the crash that Ryan Preece had there towards the end of the race, where he just barrel rolled and flipped numerous times. One of the scariest wrecks I've ever seen. And he was taken to a local hospital. Looks like that he's okay. But David, that was one of those that I think everybody just stopped and, lost their breath for a second. I mean, that is something that, as much as this sport has gotten safer and all the directions that we've gone with this, I mean, reality check, that stuff can still happen here. I'm so fortunate that Ryan Preece is okay. It looked like it was something out of a movie or something, like a CGI thing or something there.
Yeah, it was just, golly, you just can't, as it's happening in front of you, just can't believe what you're seeing, and then for the network to slow it down, to capture it on TV, and to slow the wreck down and kind of show the audience, all the viewers, the car flipping in slow motion, and then playing it live is just like, man, you stop in your tracks. You just hope the driver's fine and hope he's okay to get injured. But man, that was violent, and it was just so violent of a wreck, and we're just so thankful that you could see him get Ryan Preece out of the car. You could see him moving around. Just to see him moving around was just a blessing. You know what I mean? And but I think I would just say I take my hat off to NASCAR and the industry for just all the safety improvements that we've had come along the last decade. And then, this new next gen car, obviously, we saw Kurt Busch announce his retirement Saturday, and that was from an injury he had earlier this year.
Last year, yeah.
When was it? Last year?
Yeah, last year.
Yeah. With this new next gen car, but NASCAR has gone to work and trying to make the car safer and trying to make it absorb that energy more. And man, it's amazing what we all witnessed, and to see Ryan, to learn that they took him to the hospital. They did release him. He's on his way back home to North Carolina, and he's going to be okay to race again. You know what I mean? But man, been a long time since we've seen a car flip that violently, that going that fast. I was really surprised to see his car come around, and we've seen this. People that have the viewers that have been watching NASCAR for a long time. We know what happens when cars slide sideways and they go backwards. The air gets underneath them and they start flipping them. I was surprised to see this new next gen car how violently it flipped and what we witnessed. But I think that we will see. I'm pretty sure we're going to see NASCAR go to work to prevent this from happening again. You know what I mean? But man, unbelievable from my point of view. It was unbelievable. It was so good to see Ryan get out of the car, and I think NASCAR will go to work and see what they can do to try to keep these cars from flying up in the air that violently. That's not good to see.
One final note from Daytona, then we'll move on, look ahead to the playoff and this weekend's race at Darlington. Dominic, let me ask you, Chase Elliott, Alex Bowman, obviously the two biggest names that did not make the playoff, were not in position to win that race. Were never really up there. I know Chase got up to third or fourth, but never was really a serious threat to win this race. Obviously, both of them missed races. Alex had the penalty. Chase still makes it in the owner's playoff based on that 9 car still racing every race. But have to wonder, is this season a failure for Chase Elliott and Alex Bowman? I mean, you're in Hendrick equipment. You're in the best cars. I mean, all you had to do was win one race and you would have been in the playoff. Is this a failure for both those teams when you look at just how well of a season that William Byron and Kyle Larson are having too?
Absolutely. I mean, you have to really think back. It's been years since you've had multiple Hendrick cars not qualify for the playoffs. I believe this is when Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Casey Kane were still with the organization. It's a long time that this has not happened. We just don't see this out of Hendrick Motorsports. And I've said on the show before, you look at the stats that Chase has, and I'll even throw Alex in there, all these top 5s and top 10 finishes. That's a great season for most drivers. But that's unacceptable if you're in Hendrick Motorsports equipment. And in fact, Tyler, I was on ESPN Radio Albuquerque talking about this on their motorsports show last week with Chase Elliott and sportsmanship. Sportsmanship cost Chase Elliott a spot in the playoffs. That incident, the Coke 600, where he's out, he crashes out of that race. He doesn't race at Gateway. That's at least 80 points given up right there, just between the 1 point you get at the Coke 600 and no points the following week. If we're going points alone, he could have pointed his way into the playoffs despite missing 5 races. Sportsmanship killed the momentum and killed Chase Elliott's chance at making the playoffs. This is the first time for both of those guys, Tyler, that Chase Elliott and Alex Bowman, since being a part of Hendrick Motorsports on a full-time basis in the Cup Series, have missed out on the playoffs.
Well, then now, David, some tough decisions, I imagine, potential changes, because that's not going to fly well with Mr. Hendrick, with Mr. H. There of 2 of his teams missing the playoff. I mean, Blake Harris, new crew chief there, the 48 car, not doing so great, didn't have a great first year, if we're going to be real. And his old team at front row is doing better without him there with Michael McDowell making the playoff. A lot of frustration with Alan Gustafson, the crew chief for Chase Elliott, some of the decisions he made, in particular at Watkins Glen. And then you can even argue with Alex Bowman in particular. Alex Bowman, really since that Las Vegas race of last year that he won, has not been the same driver that he was a couple years ago when he won 4 races here. Pressure's on, and I imagine that Mr. H is not very pleased right now and might be looking at some personnel changes or whatever needs to do, because this doesn't fly for this organization.
Yeah, Tyler, you're right. When you think of Hendrick Motorsports, every team in that organization is a championship caliber team. They have all the engineering, all the resources. They have everything that you need to win races and win championships. But it's interesting that organization, you have one car that's just done a phenomenal job this year, and you have 2 of the others that have struggled. And then Kyle Larson's had a decent, good year, But man, it's interesting how an organization like Hendrick organization, how successful they've been for so long, and you get to 2023 and how you can have really 2 teams within the organization have really showcased the wins, and a breakout year for William Byron. And then the other two, it's been such a challenge. You just seem like an organization. Uh, the probably the powerhouse of all the teams in our sport. It's interesting to watch several teams in that organization struggle. Chase Elliott, like you said, William Byron, not William Byron, Alex Bowman. And it's kind of interesting. It's like, man, because they got very, very, very smart people. They got great leadership, great management. And, it's like how, it's hard to comprehend how two teams can have so much speed and win races and run good consistently, and the other two have struggled. You know what I mean? It's like you don't really see that. It's something so new because we're just not used to seeing that out of that organization. And that being said, I asked the question to you guys. There's really, you think back to 2022 and you look at who made the chase after Daytona this past weekend. There's probably 6 or 7 drivers. I mean, not only Alex Bowman and Chase Elliott, you look at it, what is it, Austin Dillon, and man, there's 2 or 3 more that I'm missing. It's interesting. I think you got some new guys that wasn't in the chase last year, and then you got guys that were in the chase. It's kind of interesting.
So David, I have that stat for you. Here you go. This is what I was referring to, actually.
Okay.
Missed the playoff in 22, but made the playoff in 23 includes Ricky Stenhouse, Chris Buescher, Martin Truex, Bubba Wallace, Michael McDowell, and Brad Keselowski. That's 6 new playoff drivers this year. Also, 6 drivers that missed the playoff that made it last year. Austin Cindric, Alex Bowman, Chase Elliott, Daniel Suarez, Austin Dillon, and Chase Briscoe, the 6 that missed on that front there. So pretty crazy that there was a big shakeup, a lot of parity. That's what the sport wanted, and they got it certainly this year with the way the playoff ended up shaking out on that front. So we shall see. I'll say this, Dom, one more point, and then we can move on and look ahead to the playoff here. I think the thing that probably is the frustrating thing, if you're Chase Elliott, you're for Alex Bowman, there's a number of drivers that are sitting at home, and I would even add crew chiefs to this equation, that would say, if I just got a shot, we could get to victory lane in that Hendrick equipment. But it's easier said than done. I mean, look at Corey LaJoie this year. He struggled in his one shot in the 9 car there at Gateway. But I think the bar should be simply set as this. If you can win a race and make the playoff, then you can drive for any team in the NASCAR Cup Series. Any. You win one race, make the playoff, you secure a ride, you can have a whole career if you average 1 win and a playoff appearance every year. And the 48, the 9 car couldn't do that at Hendrick. They're embarrassed right now.
Oh, big time. That's a huge embarrassment. Like I said, their seasons are good for most drivers, but that's not Hendrick A-list caliber equipment and expectations that Rick Hendrick has for that organization. We're talking Chase Elliott, who won the championship in 2020. 3 straight championship 4 appearances the last 3 years. That's not happening. Alex Bowman's only finished top 10 in points once in that car. Now, don't get me wrong, he's made the playoffs every season there at Hendrick Motorsports. That is still the biggest shock of this whole thing. The 9 of the 48 could not secure playoff appearances, but teams of lower average finishes and teams of questionably caliber compared to Hendrick Motorsports can't make the playoffs. Yeah, there are some bigger questions and more questions than answers, Tyler.
So, without further ado, let's take a look at the playoff standings entering Darlington. Martin Truex Jr. is the regular season champion, earning 15 playoff points. But with the 5 wins that William Byron has, they are tied at the top of the leaderboard entering the playoff at 2,036 points with the points reset. Then at 2,025 points, 11 back, you have Denny Hamlin. At 2,021 points, all the way up to 4th now, is Chris Buescher, just about 15 points back of William Byron. Kyle Busch at a 2019, Kyle Larson 2017, Christopher Bell at 2014, Ross Chastain at 2011 in an 8th place. In 9th place, Brad Kay at 2010 points. 10th place, Tyler Reddick at 2009 points. 11th, tied for 11th, Logano and Blaney at 2008 points. Then the next 4. These 4 would not advance to the round of 12 if it were to end today. On the outside looking in, Michael McDowell, 2007 points, 1 point back from the cutoff. Ricky Stenhouse, 2005 points, 3 points back from the cutoff. Kevin Harvick at 2004 points and 15th, 3 points back from the cutoff. And then Bubba Wallace with that 12th place finish at Daytona, he secured the final playoff spot. And at 2,000 points, he's 8 points back from the playoff. With all that being said, now that we know the playoff picture and where things stand, who is the favorite to win the championship, and why is it William Byron, David?
Well, man, he's got the most wins. I mean, he just had a phenomenal breakout year, and he's been the favorite to win a championship for a long time. I mean, just for I don't know how long he's been the favorite, but he's definitely still the favorite. But man, you just look at Chris Buescher and that organization. Can't count out Mark Truex. I mean, it's going to be an exciting run to the championship, no doubt about it. But it only takes, you just never know how it's all going to work out. But I still believe that William Byron is the favorite to win a championship. And I believe if we didn't mention Chris Buescher, that's also a favorite, we'd be kidding ourselves. But it's going to be exciting and fun to watch how this thing plays out in front of us. And but I mean, I don't know, man. It's just because you're the favorite don't mean you got it in the bag. I mean, you got to go race 10 more races and see how it all plays out.
We have 6 former champions among these 16 drivers in the playoff. Dominic, obviously you have to win one to get your first. How much of an advantage is having championship pedigree, having experience in the postseason here?
Well, I got to imagine somebody like Martin Truex Jr. is going to be a lot more comfortable in some of these situations than Bubba Wallace, who will be facing these for the first time. Oh, and it doesn't hurt that you're in the top 5 as far as seeding compared to Bubba Wallace, who's already on the outside looking in going to Darlington as your 16th seed. But you got to imagine you've won a championship. You've been in these situations before, and especially in this style of racing where it's stage racing, advancing to the next rounds, especially these champions that have done it over the last few years, even like a Kevin Harvick, Tyler, who hasn't won since last year. And he's pushing 39 races without a race victory. I still feel like if it's going to come down between somebody like him or Michael McDowell or Bubba Wallace or Ricky Stenhouse, who are all on that outside looking in, Kevin Harvick's got the experience. You got to think experience matters here to some degree. You've been in these situations before. You have a better idea as opposed to somebody who hasn't, who's maybe been bounced on that first round exit.
Yeah, it's a very good point that Dominic brings up. These first 3 races of the playoff of where we're headed to begins with the Southern 500 at Darlington this week. Then we go to Kansas next week for the Hollywood Casino 400. And then the Bristol night race the week following. As I look at this playoff picture, guys, I mean, of those 4, I think Dominic's 100% right. Kevin Harvick, I think, has got the best chance to advance out, to get out of that bottom 4 and go to that next round. I mean, McDowell, none of these tracks really are to his favor. Same with Stenhouse and Bubba Wallace. I don't think that Bubba's going to be outrunning, Logano or Reddick or Keselowski. The guy I'm watching for to most likely to fall out, just because it's been a while since we've seen him run at a high level, is Ryan Blaney. That would be what I would pick, is that Harvick advances and Blaney misses out on advancing to the next round.
That could happen, especially that experience. And man, I don't know, David, I know, right? We joke that you pick Kevin Harvick a lot on this show. I mean, a good reason. He's a good driver, but I think that would be a solid pick, and especially a situation like that. You have that experience. Kevin Harvick's won a title before. Ryan Blaney, we've never seen him advance to the championship or even race as a championship contender in Phoenix. Now that could change this year, but I don't know, David. I think Tyler's onto something there with Kevin Harvick.
I think he is. It's Kevin's. We're coming down to the end of his career. What do we got, guys? 10 races left. Out of the Stewart-Haas stables, Kevin's had the most speed consistently throughout the whole season. The last 2 or 3 months, he's had phenomenal speed. He's had really crazy circumstances that's kept him out of victory lane. So yeah, I agree with you because I think, Kevin's going to be racing his heart out, because this is it. And I just think, they've shown a lot of speed here last couple of months. And I just think it'd be a great feel-good story to see him in his career, with another win, and maybe a shot at winning the championship. Whether he gets that done or not, I don't know. But I think he would be at peace with himself if he came down to be in the final, 3 or 4, heading into the final race of the season this year. So I don't know if that's the case, but I do agree with y'all that Kevin Harvick will advance when the 3 races are up.
Dominic, as far as dark horses go to win the championship, I got my eye on Ross Chastain. I know he's only got 1 win on the season right now, but we've seen Trackhouse has had the best pit crews in the sport this year. You got SVG to victory lane. They got some resources there. They've had some speed all year long. Those early summer months, they were real good. But the reason why he'd be my dark horse is that history tells us Ross Chastain is willing to do whatever it takes. Love him or hate him, he'll move you out of the way. He'll run on the wall, whatever it takes. And that's what sometimes winning a championship comes down to, is having balls and being gutsy. And Ross Chastain has shown, history tells he's not afraid.
Oh, no, he wasn't afraid to wall ride there at Martinsville and advance to that championship for it. That could be a solid dark horse pick. And to add on to that too, Tyler, if his pit crew can be a little more consistent, because we've seen loose wheel issues like we did at Nashville and Michigan, and we've seen him inconsistent in playoff runs before. But Tyler Reddick and the number 45 team at 23-11, if they can piece together some strong races, and now that they have both cars in the playoffs, Tyler Reddick could make a deep run, and he would be my dark horse pick to the championship before, kind of like how we saw Christopher Bell last season. That 45 team, it's all going to depend if the whole team can collaborate and make sure they put full races together. But if they can do that, that 45 is dangerous.
All right, the moment of truth. Let's all give our official championship 4 and champion pick. Dominic, we'll start with you.
All right, putting me on the spot right away. Well, okay, if we're going championship 4, I'm going to go the obvious, easy ones. You've got Martin Truex, William Byron, Denny Hamlin, and I think Kyle Larson advanced to the championship 4. Now, I will stay consistent with what I told you guys on the show ahead of Daytona in February. I said that the champion this year was going to pull a Bobby Allison and finally win his first championship this late in his career. Denny Hamlin is the 2023 champion.
How about that? Denny, get the monkey off his back. It'd be a long time coming. My championship 4, I'm going William Byron, Martin Truex, Denny Hamlin, and Kyle Busch. Ooh. I think Kyle Busch finds a way to get in there. I expect him to be a contender and compete to win races here in this playoff. Chris Buescher, I think the luck's eventually going to run out on him. Kyle Larson, I haven't seen him dominate like we've seen in the past. Like, he's won a couple races, but he's not dominating. I don't think he'll win the championship. So that's my final 4: Byron, Truex, Hamlin, Busch, and I'm going William Byron. I've been on the William Byron train ever since I was at that race in Vegas and saw what he was able to do. I know that, we're being real with y'all. William Byron's not the most liked driver in the garage. Among fans. Like, for whatever reason, I don't get why William Byron is so hated of some sorts, but William Byron, I think is going to get the job done, bring home his first career title. The 24 gets back to another championship. David, give us your Final Four and your champion.
Well, I kind of agree with you, guy. I would say William Byron, Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex Jr., and Kyle Busch. Those will be the Final Four going into the last championship race there at Phoenix. And it's it's hard to pick. You know what I mean? It's hard to pick one, but I kind of agree with Dominic. I think after all these years and so many failed attempts at trying to get the championship, that Denny Hamlin finally gets him a championship. It's that monkey off his back. But man, it's hard to sit here and choose one. Well, I want to say William Byron, but anyway, I just think Denny's been there, done it, been so close, and I think finally after all these years, he finally gets it done.
Yeah, and if Denny wins the Dom, one more point real quick, then we got to move on. I would think it would be probably the best story, the best outcome of sorts is Denny finally win. I think it would be an emotional scene. Like if Denny finally pulled this off, that would be the best story, I think, of the potential headlines of a champion here.
You want to take a guy's word at face value. You want to believe what they have to say. And I think Denny Hamlin said it a few years back that he has come to terms that he may never be a Cup Series champion and that he's okay with it. Now, we don't know what he says in his private life. Maybe that mirrors it. Maybe it doesn't. But you got to imagine, you win that championship, he's going to take all that back. He's going to say, wow, this is really awesome to be a NASCAR Cup Series champion. He'd be, if he doesn't win the champion, just to throw a little history out there, him and Junior Johnson would be the only drivers to reach 50 or more wins and never win a title. I don't think Denny Hamlin wants that kind of statistic associated with him. You have a Daytona 500 champion, a Southern 500 champion, a Coke 600 champion, and now finally a Cup Series champion 10 weeks away. I think it finally happens. And you got to imagine that's going to be a very, very, maybe not popular, but I think he will win over a lot of fans with that championship victory if he can do it.
Yeah. Looking ahead this weekend at Darlington, the Lady in Black, the Southern 500. David, one of the crown jewels of the NASCAR Cup Series season is when we make this Labor Day visit to Darlington. This race is special. I mean, a mile and a half, but it races like a short track. It's going to be an exciting feature on Sunday.
Man, it is, man. The Lady in Black, and man, all the races are so exciting there. Not only do you're trying to outrace the competition, but you're trying to race the racetrack as well. You might beat the competition, but you may not beat the racetrack. The Lady in Black, Darlington, the track too tough to tame. It's one of my favorites, but it's such a challenge to race there because sometimes you get to racing somebody, next thing you know, you got a Darlington stripe on the right side of the car. You know what I mean? And that's not good. But man, that racetrack produces some great racing, and there's so many elements involved in trying to have a great race. So it'll be exciting. And but man, Darlington is just one of the crown jewels, and man, so much history there over the years. The oldest speedway on the circuit that we race on today in NASCAR. And man, the Lady in Black never disappoints. That's for sure. We're going to see an awesome race.
And you talk about championship contenders, Dom. William Byron won there earlier this year. Joey Logano won there last year. So did Denny Hamlin. Martin Truex won a couple of years ago. Kevin Harvick's won multiple times. The names that we talk about, even Brad not too long ago won at Darlington. I know that Eric Jones won this race last year as a non-playoff driver, but I would be surprised if it's not a playoff driver in victory lane.
You got to imagine a playoff driver is going to be the one going to victory lane on Sunday night. Yeah, the Eric Jones win was pretty cool and special, but especially, and we'll get into the odds in a little bit here, but you have so many odds-on favorites. You have 6 winners in the past 6 races, and 5 out of the 6 have been playoff drivers that have won at Darlington. So I don't know, Tyler. I think it's very hard to pick against the top 16. They're there for a reason, and this isn't a super speedway or a short track where you could have a lot of more variables. This is not necessarily an intermediate track either, but it's more in line with that. And you're going to see more of your front runners running up front.
I'm rolling William Byron again. Picking him to win the championship, picking him to win the race. I'm all in on Team 24. William Byron wins at Darlington for the second time this year. David, who you got this week?
I'm going to go with Kevin Harvick. Last year in this race, he was leading the race. They had a fire on the right front of the car. There was somebody else that had a fire too after he had just pitted or something, knocked him out of the race. But man, he was so fast. I believe he was leading the race when he pitted, and the fire took him out of contention. But I think Kevin Harvick gets it done at Darlington.
How about you, Dom?
Got to go with past Southern 500 winner and Martin Truex Jr. getting it done at Darlington, getting that advancement automatically to the round of 12.
All right, there you have it. So that is our preview for Darlington this week. The first race of the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs, the Southern 500. News and notes coming up next. Ask David in just a little while as well. But first, we turn things over to Dominic to catch us up to speed what's happening in the world of NASCAR. Dominic, take it away.
One of the biggest announcements over the weekend at Daytona International Speedway in the thick and ahead of the NASCAR cutoff race was the announcement of NASCAR past champion Kurt Busch surrounding his retirement. Kurt Busch made it official, citing doctor's orders that he will not return to the race car or behind the wheel of a NASCAR Cup vehicle ever again. Kurt Busch has been sidelined since July of 2022 after a qualifying crash left him with concussion symptoms that never went away, Tyler. They lingered, and Busch has been out of the car since 2022, over a year. Kurt Busch is going to retire with the 2004 championship, 34 Cup Series points awarding wins, including a Daytona 500. Never got the Southern 500, but did get a Coca-Cola 600. And arguably, I would say, Tyler, one of these drivers, how many can you say that bounced to different teams that made the team a little bit better from when they started to when they left? They found him and he made him a little bit better. And I mean Roush Fenway Racing, Team Penske, Phoenix Racing, Furniture Row Racing, Stewart Haas Racing, and in his last role at 23XI Racing and Chip Ganassi Racing too. These teams were a little bit better when he left.
He was the ultimate journeyman. I mean, you think of like journeyman quarterbacks in football, like the Ryan Fitzpatricks of the world.
Jeff George.
Jeff George, I mean, he was the journeyman, but still won a championship. I mean, like, Nick Foles would be an example of that. I look back, the career for Kurt Busch was fantastic. As you mentioned, made everyone better. He gave no Fs either. I mean, he did things his way. He was aggressive as hell. I mean, Kurt just didn't give a shit, I mean, he was just who he was. And I know that it rubbed some people the wrong way, but I respected it. I loved what I saw from Kurt Busch. I enjoyed his career. David, I'm sad to see that his career ends, but he's got to do what's best for his health, for him and his family. I'm glad that he's listening to doctor's orders and that he's not going to step in a race car. It sucks for us as the consumer, but he's doing the right thing here, and he'll be a Hall of Famer here, first ballot Hall of Famer here in a couple of years.
Yeah, no doubt about it. He's a future Hall of Famer, and his health is the most important thing. And the orders of the doctor, obviously, there's his concussion, his recovery. There's probably things that are going on that the general public, we all don't know about. And I remember back when Dale Jr. was injured and had his concussion and his issues. He was fortunate that he got with some great doctors and he was able to to get Dale back to normal. And I remember he raced that final year, just to kind of a farewell tour. But I think you could tell that, the doctors that said, hey, if you have another bad crash and another concussion, we're not going to be able to, I think he knew that if something went wrong, that they wouldn't be able to get him back to normal. And I think, now with Kurt Busch having the concussion symptoms and, whatever issues he's having and having orders that, hey, man, you cannot get back in a race car because, obviously there's some types of issues that won't allow him to do that. It's, he has nothing to be ashamed of. He is one of the all-time best, winning a NASCAR Cup Series championship, 34 races, Hall of Famer, will definitely be inducted in the Hall of Fame over time. He was just a hell of a competitor on top of his game for many, many years. And it's just always sad to see a great ambassador, a great superstar of the sport when they have to throw in the towel and call it quits. You know what I mean? I would like to send Kurt, but guys, at Pocono when he had that crash in qualifying, I mean, Kurt Busch was still winning races. He was very strong, and he had, I would think many more years of racing, not just racing on the Cup side, but winning races. You know what I mean? And see that being cut somewhat short saddens me. You know what I mean? Because you want every athlete to be able to kind of retire how they want to retire, not because of a medical condition. You know what I mean? So, but man, he has nothing to be ashamed of. Accomplished so much more than so many others, and just phenomenal year. Phenomenal career.
Yeah, and Dom, one more thing on Kurt Busch too. I think, and I don't think he would say this himself right now, but later on, is an important part of his legacy is being the older brother to Kyle and them being the best brother duo this sport has ever seen. Better than the Labanis, better than many others. I mean, they were the cream of the crop. And one of the best moments of his career, I think, was when he straight up beat Kyle head-to-head at Kentucky in one of his final wins of his career. That was a great moment for Kurt. So, to me, I think that's a huge deal. I know that he's, I've talked to him, you've talked to him. He's super excited for his nephew, Brexton, of what he's going to do someday in the Cup Series. But the Busch name is already big for this sport. The best brother duo of all time, like I said, but it's going to live on for many years. I'm just excited for it. I mean, that's the legacy that they carry on this sport. It all started with Kurt.
Absolutely. And to think he's the last, he is the last driver. They got to race against Dale Earnhardt. And you think back on this man's career. And Tyler, I think back to, like, when you think of Kurt Busch memories, and David, I'm sure you remember this too, the 2012 Sonoma race, Kurt Busch in that 51 car. I mean, I know they got a Hendrick Motorsports engine, but he qualifies top 10, muscles his way to the lead. He's challenging Clint Boyer and Tony Stewart for the win, had a sway bar issue in the closing lap, still finished third in that race. I knew right there, wow, Kurt Busch really, really is a wheelman. I mean, you have to be really good to win a Cup Series championship and win races, but to do that in that inferior of equipment at the time, very, very impressive. So it's going to be moments like that, I think, that stand out to me, Tyler. And we see Kurt Busch, and we're going to be able to look back on all these different highlights when they show his Hall of Fame role. That's not one or two teams. They're going to be showing 5, 6, 7 teams. He made all these teams better. And you're right. He is the ultimate journeyman. He made all these organizations just that much better, and he was that much better of a driver because of it.
Yeah. Kurt had a very good career, and we're not done with Kurt by any means. He's obviously in the booth from time to time, and serves as a driving coach for 2311 and an ambassador for Monster Energy. So he'll still be around in some capacity as far as that goes. What else we got, Dom?
Well, Joe Gibbs, hopefully, maybe giving some sort of update. Who knows? He was on SiriusXM on Tuesday, giving a little more insight on the Denny Hamlin situation. Joe Gibbs said, hopefully there's going to be something to announce here real quick. Now, he didn't really give a timeline, but it is in regards to Denny Hamlin. And he was regarded as making the comments that he would love for Denny to finish and retire his career at Joe Gibbs Racing as a driver there. Now, so many moving parts and pieces like we talked about on this last week, Tyler. But of course, Joe Gibbs has been known to say stuff like this and do other things, but I feel like there's a special relationship here because of Denny Hamlin and the relation to JD Gibbs and JD bringing him into the fold in the Cup Series in 2005 and 2006. He's been with one car and pretty much one primary sponsor his entire time in Cup. And it sounds like maybe they want this to finish out the way it's supposed to. Now, will it be a storybook ending? Who knows? But with the comments that Gibbs made on Tuesday, Tyler, it sounds like they're really trying to keep Denny in the stable.
Yeah, I mean, they can say that, but I'll believe it when I see it. Now, we did hear on top of that too, some pushback of Stewart Haas selling their 2 charters, which obviously, if Denny's going to drive for 2311, they need another charter. And at the moment, anyway, at least publicly, there's not any charters for sale right now. So, with that said, David, a lot of events to unfold here with Denny Hamlin as far as his future goes, where things stand right now. I'll be honest, David, I'm as confused as ever. I'm not exactly sure where he's going to end up here.
Well, you know what, one thing about it, no matter if he stays with Joe Gibbs Racing, and there's that storybook ending on a phenomenal career once Denny calls it a career, driving for just an amazing organization, Joe Gibbs Racing, and the personal relationship he has with the Gibb family and JD and Corey Gibbs. You love that family atmosphere. It's family, but man, there's so much. It's not that easy anymore because you got to partner. I mean, the world's biggest sports figure in the world, Michael Jordan. They got plenty of funding, plenty of great sponsors, all the funding, technology, engineering. They have everything they need to be a championship caliber team, So, it's interesting because, whether Denny stays with Joe Gibbs Racing or he chooses to pursue driver owner of his own team, both scenarios are pretty awesome. That any race car driver would like to be in Denny Hamlin's shoes, because whichever one works out, I mean, it's not however it turns out, it's going to turn out for a positive thing for Denny. You know what I mean? It's tough. You know what I mean? You're out there racing. I mean, Saturday night. I mean, Denny Hamlin is already in the chase with Joe Gibbs Racing with FedEx and the 11 car, and his teammate Ty Gibbs. Obviously the organization like to see Ty Gibbs part of that playoff picture, one of the top 16 drivers that's going to advance, and and I guess they had asked Denny earlier in the day or days before Saturday, was his allegiant, or who would he help Ty Gibbs, or would he help his own car, being Bubba Wallace? And I think I heard that he would definitely choose his own car with Bubba Wallace driving it. You know what I mean? So it's kind of a unique. I don't even know what you call it, unique situation, but it's been such a storybook career, crazy, loving Denny Hamlin or hate him. He's one of the all-time best. He's fast. He's good. He's controversial. He cares for the sport, and, but the truth of the matter is JD Gibbs brought him into the Cup racing with Joe Gibbs Racing, and look how it's turned out. And in the perfect world, in a feel good world, and being the right thing to be being loyal to the people that brought you the dance, you would think he would want to play out the rest of his career with Joe Gibbs Racing. But man, on the other hand, God, look at who his partner is, and look at what they're building at 2311. So man, it's such a unique situation. I don't think any other driver in the history of the sports ever had decisions to make, and again, the decision that Denny will finally make, either one of them is phenomenal. You know what I'm saying? But just unique.
Yeah.
What's you guys' thoughts? What's y'all's thoughts?
Dominic, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I Man, it's a great point you bring up. The only one I could really think of when you said that nobody in history that maybe would even maybe somewhat come close would be Dale Earnhardt with DEI, as DEI was rising through the ranks in the 90s and bringing in Steve Park, Darrell Waltrip, and Dale Jr. going full time. And then, of course, Waltrip coming into 2001. Maybe a situation like that. But what a cool problem to have where it doesn't work out at Joe Gibbs Racing. Well, you know what? I'm going to go race for my own team. Not every driver has that luxury or is in a spot like that. So I think Denny has a lot more leverage than probably a lot of people realize.
Yeah, and then the Ford dynamic too. I mean, I can't imagine that he can race for a Toyota team and own a Ford team. I mean, that's not going to fly.
Well,
so
it complicates the situation of kind of a conflict of interest, man. It's just so interesting, you know. But keep going, Tyler.
Right, like either he's still with Joe Gibbs and racing Toyotas and 2311 stays a Toyota team, or he's going to 2311 and racing Fords and they become a Ford team. I would find it very odd, a world where 2311's a Toyota team and he's racing for them, or he's racing for Joe Gibbs and 2311's a Ford team. Like, I think there's only two paths this can go.
Yeah, I agree with you. You know, it's interesting, you know, and it's just big business. It's not, it's complicated. It's all financially big business driven, you know what I mean? But you know, it would be a unique situation for 2311 to be a different manufacturer than Toyota and then have Denny Hamlin stay with Joe Gibbs Racing and drive a Toyota. You know, I think, you know, it's interesting if we could be a fly on the wall with these other manufacturers that you mentioned that are fighting for 2311 to jump over to their make, whether it be, you know, whether it be Chevrolet, Toyota, whoever, you know what I mean, one or the other. But you know, definitely to have Denny Hamlin, 2311, and oh, by the way, the world's biggest athlete ever, you know, probably the biggest athlete in the world, wouldn't you say that, Michael Jordan? Man, I think every manufacturer is probably fighting and trying to offer everything that a manufacturer can possibly offer financially, design, engineering, everything you get with that to get them to jump over to them. You know what I mean? So there's a lot at stake, and it's just not can you imagine the complex of those decisions? I mean, man, that's some, I can't imagine. And then my next question, you guys, has those decisions already been made? We just don't know. You know what I mean? I mean, there's probably decisions made that once the public and when we all find out about them, you know, when we do find out about them and they release them to the public, you know, they're probably, if you know, somebody has some insights, those decisions were probably made in July, August. You know what I'm saying?
And the domino effect too. I mean, here's John Hunter Nemechek thinking that he's going to go race for Legacy. And if Denny Hamlin's gone, he's not racing for Legacy. He's racing for Joe Gibbs. And then there's Zane Smith, who's, you know, the top prospect in the Ford camp. Is he going to Stuart Haas? Is he going to 2311? Is RFK going to add a third car? Where's Zane Smith go? I mean, there's a whole lot to still play out in this whole situation, not to mention Eric Almirola and his retirement. And we heard Ryan Preece say that he has a multi-year deal. What does that mean? I mean, still a lot to figure out as far as this goes. Dom, tell me about the odds coming up this weekend here in Darlington.
So all drivers opening odds for the Southern 500. Okay, let's break down some of these names. You'd mentioned Eric Jones earlier, last year's winner, non-playoff driver. He is sitting at 28 to 1, 28 to 1 odds. Your highest non-playoff driver. If you had to guess, Tyler, who do you think that might be?
Highest odds non-playoff driver, probably Chase Elliott.
Chase Elliott at 18 to 1 opening odds. Now, who do you think your odds-on favorite is?
Probably William Byron.
Shockingly, Martin Truex Jr. at 5
Really?
to 1. Now, I'll let you guys guess on this one. Who do you think is the lowest of the playoff drivers, and what are their odds?
Kevin Harvick.
No, the lowest, probably Michael McDowell or Ricky Stenhouse, and played 10,000 to 1 or whatever.
Ricky Stenhouse Jr. at 100 to 1 opening odds for the
Wow.
Southern 500. Michael McDowell not too far behind that, I believe, at 50 to 1. But yeah, a lot of odds makers thinking that your front runners are going to be the ones running up front. I think Chase Elliott, though, Tyler, 17 or 18 to 1, they're a little undervalued for the number 9 team. He's run well at Darlington. He's never won. Granted, they're not in the playoff fight as a driver, but there's still a lot of stake on that owner's championship.
And
Yeah.
Chase, he's, I mean, just any normal competitive person would be somewhat bittered that they didn't make it, and man, they want to go out the next race and win. You know what I mean? Win as many. They want to win the next 10. You know what I mean? Just to prove a point. So I think Chase has a lot to prove, and I think he'll be tough to beat.
I would agree with that. I would think so. It would kind of remind me of when Brad Keselowski missed the playoffs after winning the championship, and they went out and dominated at Charlotte in that fall race in 2013. It can be done.
Mm-hmm.
Those are your odds, Tyler.
There you go. There's a look at the odds for this upcoming week. Up next, our Ask David segment. We ask you to submit questions to us on Facebook, Twitter, as well as by email. You can find us on Facebook at Starr Podcast, as well as Twitter at Starr Podcast, by email, davidstarrpodcast@gmail.com. Our first question in the inbox this week. This one comes from Terry, and Terry wants to know, David, with the football season nearing, who are the teams that you're going to be rooting for?
Well, Terry, that's a great question, but it's an easy question, easy answer. Being from Houston, Texas, I'm a big Houston Texan fan, and then living in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, obviously the Dallas Cowboys. So I'm a Texan fan first, and behind the Texans would be the Dallas Cowboys. So those are my 2 teams, and who's my 3rd team would be the New Orleans Saints. You know what I mean? So just because they're neighbors of their neighbors. But those are my 3 teams that I cheer for. And Terry, as you know, I hadn't been a good run for a long time, but it's still, once you're a fan of your teams, you stick with them through thick and thin. You know what I mean? But hopefully, the Texans with this new coach and the Cowboys, eventually one of these Texas teams will make it to the Super Bowl and win again.
David, what about college teams? And when you root for in college, you hook 'em horns there?
Well, I mean, just because I didn't go to college, and but a lot of my families, my sister, a lot of people in my family are Longhorns, and so I do cheer for the Texas Longhorns. But there's a team here in Fort Worth, TCU, that made it to the national championship game last year, and you become to love the passion and the desire and what they've done there at TCU. So, man, I like to follow, people, a lot of people around Texas, they're pretty connected to one university. I cheer for all of them. And when I tell people that, it's like, man, you can't be an Aggie fan and cheer for the Longhorns. You know what I mean? I just want all our Texas universities to do well. And to whoever's doing the best, I line up behind them and cheer for them, but in other people's minds, that's a no-no.
You mentioned about being a Houston Texans fan. I got to ask you, David, I'm very curious. I've never asked you this before. Were you heartbroken when the Oilers left Houston and went to Tennessee?
Man, I was a big Bum Phillips fan, the coach, Bum Phillips, and I was heartbroken. I just, you just couldn't understand how the Houston Oilers could just up and go to Nashville, and I really just cheered for them to lose every time they played. I was just heartbroken, and that as a younger guy, you couldn't comprehend that. We were the Love You Blue years and days. As a young boy, just that was just amazing to watch Earl Campbell and Dan Pastorini and just Billy White Shoes Johnson and just, all the greats that played for the Houston Oilers. I mean, growing up as a kid, and then one day the Oilers just up and moving out of Houston was just you couldn't. It's hard to describe what that meant. A lot of emotions there for a young kid, and I never really I've cheered against the Tennessee Titans, you know what I mean? But over the years I've come to love them again and somewhat of a Titans fan.
That's funny. Dominic, we know that you're a diehard Green Bay Packer fan, but you've always been an Aaron Rodgers hater. Are you finally glad to have him gone?
I don't know if hater is the right word, but I won't miss him. That's kind of cool. I mean, he's fallen in Brett Favre's shoes and going to the Jets, and I'm sure he's going to make the Jets a better team. But it'll be cool to see what Jordan Love does as a Packer at the helm now as the starting quarterback. Now, Tyler, I've talked with other Packers fans. We're all thinking a 8-9 or 9-8 season is going to be a great year this year for the Packers because it's not going to be Aaron Rodgers-esque and double-digit wins and making the playoffs. But if it can at least be a respectable 8 or 9 win season, that's great. Now, you want the goal to be the Super Bowl every year, of course, but you also have to be realistic too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's going to be a rough year for the Packers.
What about you, Tyler Jones?
Chiefs fan?
I am a diehard Chiefs fan. I've been very fortunate that Patrick Mahomes, our Texas boy, has just taken the league by storm and brought 2 Super Bowls to the Kansas City Chiefs and going to bring a 3rd one this year. And he's easy to root for. His family not so much, but he's a great guy. So definitely, would love to see the Chiefs bring home another Super Bowl title. College-wise, I went to the University of Kansas, and finally, it's good to have a respectable football program for the first time in forever. They'll be fun to watch this year. I grew up an Oklahoma Sooners fan, and I'll be going to a couple Sooner games. I'll be at the Oklahoma game actually this weekend in Norman. But you better believe when Red River comes to Dallas here in October, I'll be there. I'll be wearing my crimson and I'll have the horns down. Boomer Sooner. Beat Texas. As the OU fans would say, Tuck Fexes, if you know what I mean.
Got to watch out for Melissa. She's gonna be all over you for that.
Oh, I heard it from Melissa last year when Texas beat OU 49-0. I never heard the end of that. Jeff wants to know, David, we've heard of drivers saying white lies to the media about their cars, etc., to throw their competitors offline a game of chess. Have you ever done anything like that?
Say that again.
Jeff says, David, we've heard of drivers saying white lies to the media about their cars to throw their competitors offline like a game of chess. Have you ever done anything like that?
Yeah, back years ago in truck racing, we kind of had a little bit of a when I was a GM driver, me, Jack Spragg, Dennis Setzer, Matt Crafton, I believe Hornaday, we had a plan. To answer your question, yes. I won't elaborate too much on it, but yes, I've been involved in something like that. Some tactics you use, you know what I mean, to maybe throw the other competition, the other manufacturers off a little bit.
That's interesting. It's always fascinating here, Dom. We hear that, the drivers, the teams, they don't listen to the media, they block out the noise and all this. When the truth of the matter is they're listening to everything that's said, and they're manipulating when they can to get their message across.
Definitely. I think it was Joey Logano, maybe. And if it wasn't Joey, I apologize. I'm sure maybe he's listening to this podcast. But there was a driver that said in their championship winning speech that they play a little bit of cat and mouse games with the competition because they want to throw them off. They don't want somebody to know, like, hey, if our car's great, they'll say, oh, we're running crappy in practice. They don't want their competitors to know exactly what that next move is or how exactly their car is. And that makes sense hearing that you do play a little bit of chess back and forth with your competitors. You don't want them to have you figured out 100%, I'd imagine, David.
Man, you're pretty spot on there, Dominic. Absolutely, man. Why would you tell your competitors that everything is great and you want to you don't want to tell everything's great. You want to complain about this and that and lobby for a little bit more here and not say that the make you're driving for is perfect. You don't want your competition to know that. You want to maybe challenge the industry, the sport, the rules, so yeah, it's a lot of cat and mouse approach. You know what I mean? It goes back. You not only got to be a great race car driver, but you got to and what you look at what Ryan Preece said after he got out of the hospital or while he was in the hospital. You got to be pretty damn tough to be a race car driver, but you got to be tough physically and mentally. You know what I mean? Because you can't let things bother you. You know what I mean? So, but sometimes, you hear about it in other sports. You just gotta, you got to mentally be tough. Can't let things bother you and focus on what you can control and what you and your team can do, and not sometimes, man. Some of this talk and stuff in the media and this and that can really, really confuse your competition at times, So yeah.
And I would imagine too, if you're wanting the real of how a car really is, Tyler and David, you can tell me if this is true or not. But like when you hear about those mid-race runs, like if there's a pit reporter on TV or MRN or PN, and they're reporting back what a driver's saying over the radio, that's probably my guess where you're more likely going to hear how a car really is or how a driver really feels behind the wheel, at least in that moment.
Yeah, it's interesting because with the technology that all the teams have and all the engineering going on back at the race shop, the communications from your engineering, you have engineers analyzing the race live as it's happening and reporting back to the crew chief that's sitting on the box. So you can't really embellish the truth about everything. You know what I mean? Because your competition is man, they're listening to everything, and look, all these big powerhouse cup teams, they probably have a engineer or a person that works on the engineering staff that's monitoring all the other competition. I mean, it's so competitive, and Tyler mentioned that earlier. I think he said 6 or the 7 drivers that were in the chase last year aren't in the chase this year. That just goes to show you how extremely competitive this cup racing is, So you can't really believe everything that you're hearing on the telecast when the drivers and crew chiefs are communicating back and forth, because everybody else is listening to them too. So I'm sure that way before they get to a racetrack, there's codes when somebody is saying something about their car, how bad it is. It really means, hey, it's not too bad. It's really not bad. You know what I mean? Why would you tell your you know what I'm saying? So, there's more of that going on than we know, to be honest with you.
Dominic, another kind of like inside baseball tidbit. One thing that I can say from my experience is with people within the industry, they're friendly, for the most part and everything, and they'll tell you pretty much anything you want to know off the record. I mean, like, they want that open line of communication. You want to know something, you can find that out. But on the record and putting their name on it, now all of a sudden nobody wants to talk.
That sounds like pretty much like any industry, right? You want to have those good relationships with people, and a lot of people in NASCAR are open books, and I think a lot of times too, I hear it too at racetracks where fans are asking pit crew guys questions, or people that are working under the vehicles, or even the drivers. And the drivers are pretty honest to a point, but the minute you mention that you're the media or you're going to go on the record, they want nothing to do with it.
Right. I had a
Well,
I
let
will
me,
say what it was about or who it was. I'll just keep it very vague like this. I had a conversation with somebody that I think we all know in Daytona, and it was very juicy. He gave me some great information. And then about 15 minutes in, he's like, "This is all off the record, right?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." Like, I mean, between good friends, yeah. I'm not going to say anything, but I was like, "Oh, now he mentions that." Like, I mean, but that's how it goes. It's a respect thing that goes both ways.
and a lot of these things, during the heat of the battle of the championship and just how competitive our sport is, what happens is years later, maybe the following year or 2 years later, you go to a new team, you got some changeover, you got a crew chief that leaves, a new crew chief comes in, brings some people with him, and next thing you know, you're working with a group of guys that you raced against very hard, very competitive, years prior. And as you become a team and like a family, you get close to them. And during those down times when you're out at dinners before races and stuff, and they say, "Hey, remember when this and this?" You learn stuff. You learn what they were doing, how they were doing, and it's very interesting. But eventually, it comes out over time, just because of the changeover, people moving to other teams, and you learn and you respect when you find out the truth and what's going on. You respect the team and the personnel that was the management and the crew chief and all the people involved, because they did a phenomenal job, and the way they went about doing it was just unbelievably smart. You know what I mean? Because you're trying to outsmart your competition. You're trying to get an edge. We are competing. We are racing. You know what I mean? Everything as a now when I'm watching these cup races on TV and watching it, and you're hearing all this, all the communication going on, I kind of snicker a little bit at it, because I know about half of it's really not really what's happening. You know what I mean? Because you can't tell your competition what's going on.
Yeah, it's a very good point.
Yeah.
We got to run, but before we do, around the room, David, how are you enjoying your Labor Day weekend here?
Man, I haven't even sat down and talked. I was supposed to be racing in Darlington, found out today that I won't be racing in Darlington. But tomorrow I got a big sponsor meeting. I got a couple meetings tomorrow, NASCAR business related. Just getting ready for an event next week at Texas Motor Speedway with Team Texas. A lot's going on, trying to make sure that that we run 4 or 5 more races before the season's over with, and that we set ourselves up next year to race full time or as much as we can. Busy week ahead, and I haven't even now that I'm not going to Darlington to race, I know that we will be racing this weekend. I'll be racing with my kids, my boys, whether it be DJ or Vance. They'll probably be excited when they learn, because they were just saying, "Hey, Dad, we're going to race anyway, whether you're racing in Darlington or not." So they'll be excited to know that I'll be there, and be a lot of racing going on for us this weekend. It won't be in Darlington, but with my kids, and just a busy weekend, man. Business as usual. What about you guys, man? What do you guys got going on?
The Summer Jones continues this weekend. Off to Norman, Oklahoma. I'll be watching some Sooner football as they open up their season, and then family's going to come down for a couple days after that. It really is the Summer Jones, not just me, mom and dad. Spending the weekend with mom and dad, showing them around Dallas after the game, and I think we're going to take a visit to the stockyards on a Monday for Labor Day. So
they're gonna love that. But Dominic, I got a question for you. I thought
yeah.
the Summer of Jones tour was canceled a while back.
I did too. It just keeps reviving itself, I guess.
I heard the ratings were so low that it got canceled.
It was canceled. It was canceled. I think
that's what I heard, man. I mean, wow.
Just keep fighting back. Strong finish to the Summer of Jones ahead over the next couple of weeks. Dominic, how about you?
I'll be spending it with some family. We're going to actually be making a little bit of an out-of-town trip on Monday to Clovis, New Mexico, to see some family out there. So right there on the state line, I'll be closer to you guys, about halfway to Dallas-Fort Worth. But it'd be nice to have some nice family time, relax for a few days, and then we'll get back at it here on the show on Tuesday.
Absolutely. Guys, the playoffs finally here. We had an extensive breakdown on today's show. Share this with some friends, by the way, folks. If you enjoyed what we brought you today, share this show. Let's get this show out to as many people as we can. Send them the link, whether it be to the YouTube version, Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts. That's a big favor. A free way to help us and contribute to this show is by sharing it and getting this out to the masses, as many people as we can. Check us out each and every week, wherever you're listening to podcasts, YouTube as well. Subscribe on those podcast platforms on YouTube. Like the video as well. Every like goes a long way, helps out the algorithm to get this show out to as many people as we possibly can. Follow us on social media at Starr Podcast on Facebook and Twitter. Email davidstarrpodcast@gmail.com. We'll put the checkered flag out on this edition of Let's Go Racing. For David Starr, Dominic Allergon, I'm Tyler Jones. Saying so long. This has been another edition of Let's Go Racing. We'll see you next week.